Welcome to Cleantech Forward, a foresight podcast where we explore clean tech customers, capital, and Canada's path to net zero. Tune in to learn more about Canada's most exciting clean tech startups, industry success stories, investor insights, and academic initiatives as we accelerate the growth and impact of clean tech together.
Welcome to Cleantech Forward. I'm Jeanette Jackson, CEO of Foresight Canada. Today, our panel of expert investors is back with Jordan MacKenzie, the CEO of Bioform. Jordan discusses his plans to disrupt the single-use plastic industry with his unique plant-based Bioform film, the scalability of his technology, and learns more about what these investors are seeing in the world of venture capital. This Cleantech Forward podcast is supported by Gowling WLG. A global leader in intellectual property law, Gowling WLG works alongside Canadian cleantech companies to develop IP strategies that maximize business opportunities and increase market share while protecting valuable innovation. From idea to investment to international expansion, Gowling WLG understands the potential of your intellectual property at every stage of growth. Visit gowlingwlg.com/cleantech and learn how they can support your business today.
And welcome back. I'm your host for today, Jason Switzer, Director of carbonNEXT, a joint venture between Foresight and Carbon Management Canada. And of course, with me, as always, Marty Reed.
Jason, great to see you again. Happy to be back. I lead efforts at Evok Innovations, an early stage venture capital fund exclusively focused on the energy transition. I happen to sit in Vancouver, but excited to have grown our team a bit. So now have partners in Seattle, Toronto, and San Francisco, and looking to deploy capital in amazing new companies. So also with that, might like to introduce a good friend and colleague that I've known for years, who's a partner at Pangea. So Sarah Applebaum, could you say hi and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Marty. Thanks, Jason, for having me here today. I have the pleasure of also being based in Vancouver, so West Coast, Best Coast. Pangea is a hard tech investor. We invest in companies leveraging advancements in material science, chemistry, and biology, focusing on helping solve big global challenges specifically related to climate and healthcare. We invest across North America in early commercial stage companies. Our entry point is largely Series A or early Series B. And we also have an office in Phoenix, Arizona.
Awesome to be back with you guys. And we've got another fantastic startup joining us shortly. Dr. Jordan MacKenzie with us today from Bioform Technologies. And so I encourage you to imagine the curtain rising on a stage. Actually, we'll be able to do this in person very soon. Hurrah, hurrah, the crowd's getting excited. Jordan, come on out. Let's hear your pitch.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Jason. As just introduced, my name is Jordan MacKenzie. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bioform Technologies. We're a Vancouver-based company that's here to solve some of the world's material challenges by blending two fields of science, fluid dynamics and biomaterials. We're here to reshape our world by essentially establishing products that can be created through renewable materials and not having to use non-renewable feedstocks to create competitive products to plastics. So if you think about it, over the last 50 years, the world has been faced with a significant increase in demand and waste from petroleum-based plastics. Just the other day, 175 nations endorsed a historic resolution at the UN Environmental Assembly to forge an international binding agreement to get rid of plastics by 2024. Now, there are many reasons why plastic pollution is bad, but they all really come down to the destructive life cycle associated with creating plastic-based resources. It really takes about 50 to 500 million years to create oil, from sediment being pressurized under the Earth's crust. Now, if you think about how hard it is to extract that oil, we have to extract it, refine it, we create a product with it, we sell that product, and within 24 hours to even minutes, we dispose of that product. Now, unfortunately, these products will also last forever. They have microplastics in our land, our water, and in our air. So really, to remove this from reality and get into a more sustainable alternative, we need to create products and processes that use a natural and renewable resource. What we do is we create products by using biomaterials that are widely available, easily renewable, and can be harvested multiple times a year. What we've done is we've created a modification of the paper machine, essentially one of the most fast-producing, widely available, and well-established pieces of infrastructure around the world. We create products that are composed of wood pulp fiber, seaweed biomass, or alginate in water to replace a wide range of products at a cost parity and performance parity to petroleum-based products. You do not have to sacrifice performance and cost to meet essentially the market standard performance specs of conventional plastics. Our objective in the short term is to in-house produce into two markets. One is agricultural food or agricultural films that are essentially used to regulate moisture and temperature and suppress weed growth for crops. And the second is food packaging products, which, for instance, to-go beverage lids. The advantage of our process over conventional bioplastics is that we don't have to blend with petroleum-based products, and we can manufacture these materials at about 50 to 100 times as fast as plastic machinery. For example, we can produce 21 million lids in about 15 days of operation. Our objective in the long term is to establish the infrastructure to be licensed around the globe, where pipeline to the feedstocks are well established already, including Southeast Asia, Europe, and other areas in North America. So it can be rapidly adopted and obviously integrate into the marketplace around the world and start to get rid of plastic waste we have in the short term. Right now, we're looking to close a $10 million Series A financing round to build out our infrastructure to start to produce products at a small scale facility. This facility will be adaptable to increase in capacity over the next 3 to 4 years, which is simply just leaving the printer on for a longer period of time to produce more product and get that product into the marketplace. That's it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, Jordan, you're tackling a really important problem. Single-use plastics. Globally, we recognize they're bad and are looking for alternatives to eliminate that. One question I have for you around your product is going into agricultural films and food packaging. These are traditionally very low margin, high volume markets. How do you think about sort of moving Bioform into these markets as sort of the first target, or do you have other applications that you're looking at that would be lower volume, higher price as sort of your beachhead, test the waters, build out and scale the business?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are two things that we do really well. With paper machines, they don't like to be run slow. We've adopted this type of infrastructure first for scalability, and secondly, because of its inherent ability to create strong biomaterials. Paper is considered a strong biomaterial as well. One of the advantages of our product production platform in comparison to paper is that we don't use any heat or toxic chemicals to create our product. In fact, most of our products are actually composed of water. 50% of our to-go beverage lids, for example, is water, and 80% of our agricultural mulch films is water. Our margins at that point are between 40 and 50%, even at a small to medium scale facility. These are preliminary modeling numbers, but nevertheless, the value of it is in our inherent ability to utilize the water composition in our product to increase margins and get our product out into the marketplace. And that, for us, in terms of scalability, is vital at this stage.
Yeah, so with plastics, the one advantage, to use that term, of plastics is they are actually pretty efficient to make, and any alternative, of course, has some embedded energy footprint in it. Can you talk really quick about just kind of high level from a life cycle analysis, which is a bit of a phrase, but talk to me about how the energy footprint of your product would compare with, say, the incumbents, because harvesting kelp, as an example, must be a somewhat energy intensive process.
Yeah, so there's two types of harvesting kelp right now. You can cultivate it and it's widely farmed. We have done a third-party LCA analysis in our products, and we're 80% from a carbon footprint perspective less than one of the most common petroleum-based products in the marketplace. That's polypropylene. You generally see that for to-go beverage lids or takeaway containers and things of that nature. And also, if you compare it to kind of the global standard kind of degradable product in the marketplace, that being PLA, we're 75% less than that. Oddly enough, it doesn't come from the harvesting of the kelp. It comes from the shipping of our feedstock in from Asia. We are looking to develop an aquaculture sector in the West Coast. Obviously, that's a much longer term objective to mitigate that and improve our LCA even further. But as it stands right now, being at an 80% reduction in comparison to a conventional plastic and 75% less than to a market dominant bioplastic, it's pretty encouraging at this stage.
Thanks, Jordan. And of course, I'm curious about so many things about your business, including your comparative cost against conventional plastics, or even against some of the biodegradable ones. How do you compare on a sort of per unit cost basis?
Yeah, so right now, the value of it, so plastic is challenging to make from a cost perspective, hence why it has to be sold at such high volumes because of the heat. Heat is very expensive. We remove the heat from our process entirely. We don't use any. And that has allowed us to essentially maintain a cost parity to plastic. In comparison for pricing of our products to get into the marketplace, we haven't established that exactly the price we want to go into the marketplace with. But what we do know, based upon third-party engineering consulting and what we've done up to this point over the last 4 to 5 years, is we have understood the process in such great detail that we can maintain capacity without having to introduce very costly pieces of infrastructure like heating, for example. And that has been very advantageous for us to essentially reduce overhead and reduce essentially the cost at the end for the end user.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit, Jordan, about end of life with the products. If I, buy a coffee cup that has a bioform lid or other sorts of food packaging, is this something that a consumer would put in their municipal compost bin? Does it get landfilled? How do you think about sort of the full life cycle of the product?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's one that's been brought up many times before. From our perspective, it can be disposed of kind of agnostically. It can be disposed of in a garbage bin. It's 100% home compostable. It doesn't require tailored composting conditions like, for example, PLA, where it has to be sent to an industrial compost facility. The advantage with us is that it really is supposed to be meant as a product to produce more feedstock, that being producing healthy compost that you can use to replant more trees, create more oxygen, sequester more CO2. From our perspective, it's in terms of what the best metric is to use from the product. So users will obviously know what the best opportunity is to dispose of the product. That could be coloring or other types of things. But as it stands right now, it can be composted naturally or through industrial composting, or obviously through a landfill if it's sent there as well.
So you're asking or looking for a $10 million raise, which suggests that you believe this to be truly scalable to its sort of venture type returns. And for those listening, in venture, we generally are not looking for good businesses. We're looking for potentially very big businesses. And those are sometimes not one and the same. And so, with any sort of, kind of circular economy or waste of value, we often get nervous about availability of feedstock and how this can scale. Especially when you start thinking about the magnitude of, say, plastics. A single customer, a Coca-Cola, would insist on minimums that would make most startups nervous, to put it mildly. So can you just talk about your pathway to really, truly scaling this and what that would look like?
Sure. So I couldn't agree with you more in terms of feedstock has always been one of the most important considerations we've had, especially at this early stage. We do have multiple suppliers for our feedstock. As you know, we are modeling our infrastructure similar to paper. The beauty of the paper machine is that it is agnostic to pulp. Now, the quality of paper obviously is largely dependent on the type of tree that you use to create that paper. For us, we have sourced alginates from seaweeds that happen to be the most widely available in the world. We have multiple suppliers that can send us the alginates that we need for current production estimates. Right now, we could sell about 42 million kilos of product with the alginate that we can acquire right now. It's a significant, just like any other commodity. As long as you put forecasting in place, you can acquire the amount of feedstock that you need for it. And we do anticipate that other markets are starting to open up. Alaska is dominant right now in terms of building out kelp farming as a key opportunity for along the coastline. And we see that obviously extending into the coming years. Our objective is to license the technology to regions, at least in the short term, that do have these local feedstocks near them, simply to reduce supply chain risks and ensure that they have the feedstock that they require to produce enough for that local market. But as it stands right now, for us here operating in Vancouver, we have more than enough availability of the feedstocks for quite a number of years.
I'd like to ask just a quick follow-up, which is understanding your unique competitive advantage or sort of intellectual property. what would prevent others from watching what you're doing and frankly doing something similar that have a much bigger scale? And I don't know who that would be, but maybe a international paper, Georgia Pacific, that already have a very, dominant position in forestry products. But I'll just give a quick high level of the sort of, again, your intellectual property or your unique sort of competitive moat.
Sure. So it's a little bit two things, actually. Our intellectual property is based upon a method to manufacture. There's a very delicate method in which you can create these types of products that we've established and essentially got it to a position where now it's rapidly scalable. It took us years to get there. There's a piece of equipment kind of commonly used in kind of the forming section of paper making. We have had to modify that substantially to be able to create our product, but all the back end processing that would be like pressing out water, for example, out of these products is very similar. In terms of companies being able to modify what we have, it's very challenging given the structure of the patents that we have right now. And we will continue to generate intellectual property to secure it further, giving us what we hope in the as we continue to progress and scale, kind of the freedom to operate pinnacle that you're looking to get for this type of infrastructure. But we've done a lot of research and development, and certainly a lot of product development to ensure that we are adding as many layers as we can to solidify ourselves as a leader in this space, limiting the others for hindering our growth.
Going back to Marty's question about feedstock and scale, Jordan, 42 million kilograms of end product sounds like a lot, but we're talking about very large markets for, agricultural films, food packaging, and other similar products. At scale, like what proportion of the existing market do you believe that Bioform can displace?
In terms from single-use plastics, there are markets for us that we look into being very low-hanging fruit, and that would be in areas called thermoforming. Where essentially it's a process where you take a film and you vacuum it around a mold and you can make a hard container. That would be very common for coffee lids, soft drink lids, to-go containers, things like that. Bottles and those types of products, which use a different infrastructure, more challenging for us for sure. But in terms of making a film for agriculture applications and a wide range of thermoform products, those are things that we believe that we can replace relatively easily with the type of technology we have. Outside of that, it's more research and development, intellectual property would have to be generated to do so.
Yeah, just to clarify, so 42 million kilograms with your existing suppliers. What percentage of coffee lids does that displace? Is this, 1%, 5%, 10%? Just help us understand the scale of the problem you're going after.
Yeah. So, for example, a large fast food chain here in Canada would use between 20 and 40 million lids a year. With that quantity, we would be in about 4 billion lids is what we would create. It's a significant quantity in these markets. In terms of getting a hold of a significant chunk of the agricultural film market, the value in the technology also comes down to our ability to scale the width, for example. We can increase the amount of how wide these sheets are and cut them to the right length to mitigate risk in terms of how much time we need to have a seasonal product. Now, we are looking into certainly understanding how scalable with the current suppliers that we have, our alternative supply could be with enough forecasting. And right now, we haven't seen a significant challenge from their perspective in getting a significant more alginate than the one I've just given you. So I'm hoping that would lead to, I would say, a market adoption of 40, 50%, things of that nature.
I'd like to understand how you sort of differentiate to the end user or customer, meaning if I go into Timmy's and get a cup of coffee, I'm not necessarily paying a lot of attention to the lid. And so how do you end up not just in a sort of ruthlessly competitive, unbranded market effort? Are you intending to brand this? I guess just help me think through how you create some extra value there.
At this point in time, yes, we are going to considering to brand it. It is, from what we know up to this point, a really unique product in the sense that the one that competes the best with us being 100% home compostable or paper. And I think we've all had paper straws, paper lids. They don't really work as well. So we are looking to brand it. And certainly the advantages is with the plastic bans coming in place, we think that this would really accelerate our adoption for this particularly unique product. Simply, it is 100% plant-based, non-compostable. But we are absolutely looking into branding, coloring, really differentiating our product from other competitors in the marketplace to ensure that it's recognizable.
Just be really smart. Building a brand can be expensive, and
Yeah.
I'll challenge anyone on this call to name a competitor. Like, I consume a lot of products, and I, off the top of my head, can't think of them. I know if I had a cup in my hand, I could probably recognize the brand, but I've never once walked into a store and said, "Oh my gosh, it'd be great if I could get this coffee with a X." I don't know what that is. So just be smart about how you do that.
Or on the flip side, oh man, this coffee shop is using XYZ brand. I don't like their cups. I'm not getting my coffee from here. I'm going to go, around the corner.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think from our perspective, the branding comes into differentiating the home compostability and less so of the company. I think from our perspective, that's the most important thing to advance, showing that home compostable products that are plant-based and proving to be an effective replacement of plastic, but still having sustainable plant-based composition. I think that, to me, is the brand we're looking to create to really start to push the opportunity forward to replace a multitude of other plastics beyond just coffee or soft drink lids.
Well, and to be positive, I think, Intel was incredibly effective at making us suddenly care what kind of microchip was inside of a computer, and that mattered for a good long time. So, I would say there is a pathway there. Jordan, the opportunity is now to you to ask our investors some questions. What would you like to know from them that would be helpful for you in making that next big commercial step?
There's a long list. Where to really start? What's interesting is that, we're a CapEx intensive company, and that's just something that we have to be aware of. And I wanted to get an understanding of what types of metrics would be the most important from a VC standpoint to look into when there's a CapEx intensive company that has growth potential, but the first few years are going to be relatively heavy on infrastructure build out. I mean, what key things are you looking for there to ensure that it's scalable and technology?
So there are a couple things. One, what we'd be really interested in is what's the customer pull and interest. Are you able to establish offtake agreements, prior to investing in infrastructure, or as you're building your plant, are there customers there that are really willing to take, a significant amount of your capacity to de-risk the investment in that infrastructure? Or is it more a strategy of, if we build it, they will come, which has different implications and risks for the company and for investors. And then the second piece is, especially if you're using a lot of existing off-the-shelf equipment and infrastructure, do you have to own it all? Can you, lease it and get, working capital lines of credit and other types of facilities, so that you're not using equity, which is the most expensive capital you'll bring into your business, in order to fund the infrastructure and the scale up?
Yeah, and I think Sarah and I are very much on the same page. Venture investors generally are nervous pouring a lot into CapEx absent real customer traction or evidence of customer traction. The good news is there's certainly a number of, non-dilutive programs, especially in Canada, that can help support this type of work. And then as you start to, further de-risk the technology, there are a lot of great partners out there also that can help with investing in CapEx. Folks like, Export Development Bank of Canada has a program, as an example, if you're looking to, partner with customers outside of Canada, that potentially can really help. But I would say, the good news is there are investors like a Pangea or Evok that are a lot smarter and have experience in well, I don't want to say we're all necessarily smarter, but at least we've learned a lot of lessons over the years about how to support more capital intensive businesses. So we're not afraid of them. But you've got to be smart. And to Sarah's point, equity is the most expensive, sort of form of capital. So, use it wisely.
Appreciate that. It's one of the things that we've been really going to get some more information on, in terms of where the kind of standards lie from the perspective of the VC on that. Where do you see the most exciting investments going right now in clean tech? Is biomaterials the most dominant area? And if so, where's the lay of the land there? Is it really on the plant-based side, or where are you seeing the investments and best opportunities come up right now?
If you're asking me to draw some version of the MacKenzie hype curve, oh boy, alternative proteins might be at the top of that list. In my world, carbon capture has become incredibly popular. But, beyond that, I sincerely believe that, almost anything with a real significant, ESG impact is very much in vogue. We have hit that tipping point. There's no turning back. Corporate commitments, government commitments. And so, I think you're very much on trend, and whether or not you're at the very top of the hype curve or not, I'm not sure that's important. I think you will certainly have interested investors.
And just to add to that, Jordan, to your question, best is very subjective. How do you define best? Is best the highest valuation, in which case that's going into carbon capture, decarbonization, and hydrogen right now? Does that mean those are the best venture return companies? Time will tell, but I think focus on the fundamentals of your business, develop a compelling economic offering for your investors and for your customers, and that will serve you well in the long term.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's a process for sure. There's a lot of moving parts into really getting everything together for financing at this magnitude.
Well, look, let me say on behalf of our group here, a huge thank you for taking the time to join us today and for presenting your story, which is very exciting, and I think could be one of those amazing stories that we talk about growing out of the Canadian clean tech sector and out of that hub of innovation in and around Vancouver. So with that, thanks for joining us today. I guess we'll take a couple of moments now to just chat between ourselves and let you resume your week.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to be on the show.
Well, why don't we take a couple of minutes to just have some closing thoughts on his presentation and how it maybe compares or some of the other ideas you might have for entrepreneurs in building a pitch in this space.
Yeah, I mean, the starting point, I think Jordan did a pretty good job just opening his elevator pitch. Can always be a little tighter, but I think pretty quickly got a good sense of what he was working on. The things that always make me nervous in this type of space really go around that scalability and differentiation. I'm not an expert in alginate, but it sounds like it's a fairly uniform input that can scale. I always hate having to sort of sort through kind of quote waste feedstocks and try to find, the gold in there, which can be very difficult to do. And so, if I were to lean in, for me as an investor, it would really be understanding truly how scalable can this be and at what CapEx. If every time you need to bump up revenue an extra few million, you've got to, invest in significant, machinery, that's a bit worrisome. But to my point earlier, I think it's very much on trend. The discussion around circular economy is full tilt these days. So I suspect he will be successful.
So, agree with Marty about, the mission, vision, values of the company really resonating with the investment community right now. I think they'll be successful in their raise. But, for me, the things that are really important are, the nuts and bolts, the financial metrics here. And, we've seen a lot of companies trying to go after single-use plastics in food packaging. I have no doubt that what Bioform is doing is incredibly useful and has customer interest. Whether this is a good business or a venture scale business is very much to be determined. You're talking about, coffee cups, straws, other types of food packaging. These are items that are sold for cents, not dollars. And so even if you are realizing a 40 or 50% gross margin here, you have to sell a heck of a lot of coffee lids in order to make sort of a meaningful dent in revenue for the business to justify the CapEx that I'm sure they need to invest in order to scale. And so really want to understand, the tension there. And, the other piece, which I think Jordan could tighten up a little bit more is, with the scale of their pilot facility, I don't know how large it's going to be. How much single-use plastic are they actually going to be able to displace? Will it be, 50% of plastic coffee cups with XYZ, large chain, across the country? Is it 100? What's the percentage here? I want to understand the scale of magnitude of impact, because you are using waste products, other inputs that you're going to have distributed manufacturing around. If you used all of the seaweed alginate in the world, would you be able to meaningfully displace the plastics and agricultural films you're going after, or is it a nominal amount? I get the sense that it's meaningful, but would like to better understand that.
Yeah, I mean, one other one that I'd love to understand is sort of to Sarah's point, the difficulty of competing with coffee lids is like not to be underestimated. I'd be curious in the agricultural film space, as an example, if he can compete as a better solution. So not trying to sell a green attribute, but can he actually sell a differentiated product that's better for growers for whatever reason, in which case that's a much, I don't want to say easier, but it's a differentiated product can really help. I suspect margins in that side of the world are pretty thin also, but I think Sarah said, we've seen a lot of folks go after single-use plastics, and I've not seen a lot of them break through at real scale just yet.
Well, and perhaps in the waste haulage and labor cost around sorting, that maybe the biofilm, the film piece might be the way that makes that difference work out.
Could be.
This has been great. Sarah, Marty, thank you for your deep insights and great questions. With that, I'm your host, Jason Switzer for carbonNEXT. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the Cleantech Forward podcast wherever you listen, and to share this episode with friends and colleagues. We're taking a brief break, but we'll be back next month with a fully revamped show, new episode format, and more in-depth conversations on clean tech and Canada's path to net zero. We'll see you there.
To learn more about Foresight's programs, events, and more, visit us at foresightcac.com or follow us on social at ForesightCAC.